Good morning. I'm going to try and speak to you in about 8 minutes about kind of the things I discovered on a 3-day trip that I did with the Regional Chamber of Commerce to DC. The opinions are not necessarily mine, so I'm a broad section of folks that I talked to in DC. The vibe and the mood, excuse me, in DC is bloody awful, to quote my sister-in-law, who's Brit. People are pessimistic, frustrated, resigned to not getting the work of the people done. One quote that I had that I really enjoyed was, Washington used to do 2 things well: nothing and overreact. Now we've added a third, which is punting. The fundamental solution to the problem I'm going to lay out in a minute appears to be to take everything, put it in a giant can, and kick it 6 months down the road. It's important to understand you don't want to unbundle anything. Therefore, it will be an all or none solution, because as soon as you pull one thing out of this giant can and deal with that, now you've lost leverage with somebody else. So don't expect piecemeal solutions. Expect either a grand bargain or nothing. Nothing, as you all know, can be pretty ugly. So let's talk about what's on the table. You have a brutal, tight, expensive, close election, both at the House, Senate, and obviously the presidential level. That's going to cause, well, let's just say tempers will be on edge. You have the SGR cut, 27%, $330 billion some odd. You have sequestration, which is $100 billion every year, $50 billion of it on the defense side, $50 billion on the social services side, or the non-defense budget side. By the way, that includes a across-the-board cut of 2% on Medicare, so your Medicare Part B rates, if sequestration kicks in, automatically drop by 2%. It does not touch Medi-Cal, read Medicaid. The 2012-2013 budget's got to get approved. There are no approved budgets for the next fiscal year. The lame ducks are going to be mad, whether it's the Dems, the Reaps, or both. Both the Bush tax cuts and the Obama tax cuts are set to expire. And by the way, the federal debt limit's got to be raised. So you see, you have this confluence of forces that's going to make it, as I like to say, Christmas chaos at the Capitol. It's alliterative and it's ugly. Let's take a look at the election. If you look at the presidential election, there are upwards of 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on hand count, states that are going to be real close. How we vote in California will not make a difference because of the Electoral College. It's a preordained fact that certain states are going to go certain ways. But if you look at the 6 to 9 states that are going to be close, there are 3 that really matter: Ohio, Florida, and Virginia. And all those are going to be close. Interestingly enough, all of the close states were won by Obama in 2008, and now they're in play. Again, I'm agnostic. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. I'm just here to kind of tell you what's going on, my perspectives on same. So in the presidential election, it matters what happens in Colorado, in Ohio, in Florida, and in Virginia. I added Colorado because it has a larger population, some of the smaller states. So that matters. At the House level, the Rapes are going to lose some votes, or they're going to lose some seats. We know that. We don't think it's going to be to the point where Nancy Pelosi's back in the Speaker's chair. That's probably not realistic. And the Senate is where it really gets interesting, because there were some pretty strong feelings that the Republicans were going to take the Senate back, at least a majority, due to some self-inflicted wounds and based on some stronger than expected Democratic candidates. The Senate's a toss-up right now. And the interesting thing is, of course, whoever is the successful vice president becomes the chair of the Senate. And therefore, I expect the vice president to be sitting in the chair quite a bit next year, as there will be a lot of votes that will need to, or close votes that will need to be broken. Why does this matter to physicians? Because right now, nobody gives a damn about healthcare financing in Washington. I mentioned the words SGR, and people kind of roll their eyes and say, "Yeah, we got it. Doc fix next. What's next on your list?" So right now, healthcare is completely off the radar screen. Likewise, when you talk about the Gypsy, which is an issue very close to San Diego, people kind of roll their eyes and go, "Yeah, whatever." So there's just not a lot of attention being paid to what is going on in healthcare financing. You talk about the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which in PPACA will have the ability to essentially, with an unelected non-accountable body to make radical changes to reimbursements for Medicare. That's not on the table right now. I call it a Tier 3 issue. It may be on the table at some future point. And finally, for those of you that either love or hate PPACA or Obamacare, depending on how you want to use the words, the thing you want to remember is no matter who is president, not much is going to change. If you have a Democratic person in the White House, they're going to veto anything that changes PPACA. If you have a Republican in the White House, the problem is that with the intransigence of the Senate, anything that does not have 60 votes in the Senate doesn't go anywhere. So if you want to repeal PPACA under a Republican president, you can do that in the House, but you can't get past the Senate. Now you can say, well, we'll starve PPACA, but you still got to get it past the Senate. So my judgment is not much is going to change on PPACA. The Supremes have spoken, and they've had the last word. If something completely untoward were to happen, you had one administration had the House, the Senate, with veto-proof majority in both, that's a different matter. I don't expect that. Finally, we're all going to be really smart on November 7th because we will have seen the results of the polling. But until that happens, frankly, there's a lot of indecision up in the air. So now let's talk a little bit about what went on in California. It is really important that folks understand that CMA exercised some of the power we pay for through our dues and through our contributions to CalPAC. We had 3 bills all dealing with health, public health, that went through. They're on the governor's desk. We expect those to be signed. You can read about the details in news you can use. The trial lawyers made a run on MICRA. They nibbled around the edges because they wanted to change a minor provision that would have deleteriously affected MICRA. They got stuffed. And I don't mean by a little bit. They got absolutely stuffed. And to me, that is a huge reminder of 2 things. MICRA matters, and we're watching it like a hawk day and night. And we've done pretty well. We've done really pretty well at making sure that candidates understand MICRA. When they show up in Sacramento, they're well versed in the issue and they know that they really don't want to go down that road if they want the support of the physicians. There will be a special session. It will most likely deal with the after effects of whether Prop 30 passes or not, the tax increase. We will try and get healthy families back in business. We lost a reclama to healthy families in the last hours on August, the last days in August. But we'll try and get healthy families back. And then we'll have to deal with the health insurance exchanges. I want to talk a little bit about the work comp bill, SB 863. I think what's important to remember is that unless you're a 12-year-old or a 6-year-old, nobody gets everything they want. That bill popped out of nowhere in the last 3 weeks of the session. CMA did a superb job in eliminating some of the extremely anti-doctor things in that bill. And we did not get everything we wanted. But the fact that we were at the table, that when the governor called the meeting, Dustin Corcoran was at the meeting, who's the CMA CEO, and that the significantly deleterious impacts that were in the bill were removed. No, it's not perfect, and yes, some people were harmed in the physician community, but it is so much better than what could have happened. So that's kind of what's going on in Sacramento. I think I will defer to your reading of the news you can use. And as always, if you have any questions, don't be bashful about calling me at 619-206-8282. We are here for you. Oh, before I go, there's a media training on 2 weeks from tomorrow, on the excuse me, on the 29th of September, and then there's Leaders Toolbox on the 10th and 11th of November. We've specifically moved Leaders Toolbox, which is our leadership in a box, a small box, 12 hours worth of classroom instruction box. We've moved it to Saturday and Sunday to allow physicians who have that pesky day job to be able to participate in it. So I strongly encourage you, if you're even remotely interested in learning a little bit about how to do leadership from a very practical practical way, please sign up for Leaders Toolbox on the 10th and 11th of November. And if you want to be able to stand in front of a camera and not think that is a verb, then please sign up for Leaders Toolbox, for media training on the 29th of September. As always, you can do that by emailing me. With that, I'll close and thank you for being a member.